Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Now in today's video, we are going to look at a complete end-to-end Jenkins Azure CI/CD pipeline. So in this project, we will have our code in a GitHub repository. Now this code is a Java Spring Boot app. Then we will use Jenkins to create a pipeline environment. We will use Maven as a build tool for our Java app. And then we will use SonarQube to do a vulnerability check and check for code smells and bugs in our code. From there, we will use Docker to containerize our app, and then we will use ACR Trivy to scan our Docker image and our file system. Next, we will go on to use Azure CLI to log into our Microsoft Azure account from our Jenkins pipeline using the Jenkinsfile. And then we will use our Jenkinsfile to automate the push of our Docker image to the Azure Container Registry, or the ACR. Now from there, we will deploy our Docker image to Azure Container Instance, or the ACI, via the Jenkins file that we are using, which is also going to produce us the app URL from our Jenkins logs, and then we will access our app from there. I've done this project in the past where I deployed it to GCP, and this time I'm deploying it to Azure. So stick around for the entire project and let me know in the comment section below if you have any questions. Like, comment, and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. By the way, to start it, because I've done the exact same project for GCP, from checking out the code up to scanning the Docker image with ACR Trivy is the exact same process. Okay, so I'm going to use that video to do that, and then from there, we will look at how to deploy it to Azure. So stick around for the entire video, and now let's get into it. You can follow the README here to do the entire project from end to end. This SRC is what contains our source code. If you go to source code main, by the way, the main has the application and the test has the JUnit test codes. So if you go to main, application, which is going to output hello world, welcome to iQuant YouTube channel. Inside the main, we also have resources. Now in this resources, we have an applications.properties, and this only has the one line server.port equals 8090. And that's because this Spring Boot application for Java uses a default port 8080, but 8080 is the same port that Jenkins uses. I don't want there to be a conflict. And so that's the reason why I'm changing the port for the Spring Boot Java to 8090. Now, whenever you do that, you need to create this file, application.properties, with this content or with any port that you want to give it inside the source code main/resources directory. And then this will have the JUnit test code. And this should be the correct output we should get when we test it. This is also a Docker file. You will create a /app. Now, whenever you build a Java program with Maven, it creates a target directory. And inside it, you have the application, which is a .jar or .war, which is a WAR. We will copy that inside the /app directory, working directory we created up there. Of course, it's Java based, so that's why we are using the Java image as our base image. And the port that we exposed in application.properties is 8090. So that is the port here. And the command to run it, when we copy it, we'll give it this name. So when we run it, inside a container, we need to run it as a java.jar hello world.jar. Now, because we changed the port from 8080 to 8090, you need to give it this flag as well, which is dash server.port, the new port number 8090. You have a Jenkins file, and of course, this is a README. And then we also have a pom.xml. This has all the dependencies that we need for this Java application. Now, we will also scan our image as a static code using SonarQube. So that's where this file comes in, sonar-projects.properties. We'll talk about this more when we get to the SonarQube stage. Let's get into it. Let's set up our Docker container. Now for this instance, I'm going to first create a network, okay? And before I do that, I will check the networks that are available currently on my system. By the way, I have Docker installed already on my system, which is an Ubuntu system. So these are all the networks available. So before I create my Jenkins container, I'll create a Jenkins network. paste this here and I'll call it Jenkins-Java. Now I need this network because later on I'll use SonarQube to do a static code analysis on our application. So that is also going to be running in a container. Because I need to piece everything together as a pipeline, the Jenkins container and the SonarQube container have to be able to communicate with each other. And that's why I'm trying to use a Docker network for all the containers that I'm going to use. All right. So press enter. Now network is created. Now we can create our Jenkins with this command. Find the command also on the GitHub repo. I'll paste this here. Press enter. Give it a few seconds to get ready. Docker ps. You can also check the logs using docker logs-f and the name of the container, which is Jenkins dind. The server has successfully initiated. So this is initialization. By the way, this is the initial password. Now before we can use the initial password, we need to get out of this, Control-C, and we need the IP address of our container. Just like using a VM, you would need the IP address. So use this command here. And so that is the IP address of our Jenkins container. I would copy this. And on my browser, I'll paste that. And the port is 8080. Press enter. And that should open your Jenkins UI initial admin dashboard. Now, remember we ran the log command. And so this right here is the initial password. Copy it. And paste it right here. Continue. Install suggested plugins. And this may take a while, so I'll pause it and come back once it's ready. So I'm going to create an admin user. I'll just call it admin. Give it some password. For the full name, I'll just call it admin. So you can fill in with your actual information. That's fine. Save and continue. Save and finish. Start using Jenkins. So this is our Jenkins dashboard and it's ready. We have a few issues here. So that's for Java 17. All right. Can do that later. There's also a new Jenkins available. Do that later. I'm not going to set up a node right now, so I'll discard this as well. Now on our README, so far we've set up our Jenkins. We know our IP address, we've connected to it. Now, there are sometimes when you set this up that you will see this error, that it appears that your reverse proxy setup is broken. You usually see that when you use localhost for your IP address on your browser. Now to get rid of that error, that's why I got the IP address of the container itself and you use that. So this error usually is because you use localhost :8080. With that ready, let's now log into our Jenkins container using this command. By the way, this is the same as what I have in my README locally. So first I'll clear the screen. Paste this here to get inside the Jenkins container. So we are in. First, update it. So apt update. Okay, that's done. If you look at the command that I used to set up the Jenkins, you would see that I mounted the Docker socket on my local machine, which is a Linux Ubuntu, into this container. And there is Docker that is going to be available on that container. And so you can check it to be sure if Docker is available or not using this command here. And you see that Docker is already available on it. But it's available for a user. But then we need to add the user to a Docker group. So run these commands here. All right, and now we can exit. Let's do some restart. All right, so our next step is to integrate Jenkins with our GitHub repository. Now, our GitHub repository for our project is right here. It's Jenkins GCP Cloud Run. To do that, I have all the steps written out here. Just go to your GitHub account, create a personal source token, give it these scopes, repo and admin repo hook. That should help you create a credential, and then you add that to the Jenkins, and you can easily create your pipeline from there. So let's go to our GitHub, go to your account here, go to settings. I'm going to open a new tab. Go to developer settings down here, personal access token classic, generate a new token, and I give it a name. I'll call this Jenkins GCP. I'll leave it as 30 days and select the scopes repo and admin repo hook. This is it. So only those two. Generate token. So that's our token. Copy this token and save it somewhere safe. Now go back to your Jenkins dashboard. So on your Jenkins dashboard, go to Manage Jenkins, Credentials, Global, Add Credentials, and we are going to use username with password. Our GitHub repository username is iconc. That is our username, the one at the top. So iconc. The password is going to be the personal access token we just created. And then I'm going to call this Jenkins GCP. Create this. Once your credential is created, you can go back to the dashboard, create a new item, and I'm going to call this Jenkins GCP, and that's going to be a pipeline. Let's describe it as Jenkins GCP. And we are, of course, going to use a pipeline script. If you check the GitHub repository, you see a Jenkins file here. At the moment, it's still empty. I have the stages in there, but it's still empty. There's nothing really in there. I'm going to select script from SCM, which is source code management, and our own is Git. So on our repository, copy the clone link, the HTTPS clone link, paste it here. The credential we just added, you can select it there. In our repo, our branch we are using is main. So this shouldn't be master. This is main branch. And our Jenkins configuration is inside the file Jenkinsfile. So I will leave it Jenkinsfile right there. Apply and save. So that basically creates our initial Jenkins pipeline. Simple shell commands, which is just echo some information, which will just print some information on our logs. So if I hit build now, so you see that it's successful. So it just built or run the echo commands all the way to the end. So it's a simple one. All right. Next, we are going to set up Java and Maven. If you want to build a Java application, you use Maven or Gradle and so on. But in this project, we are going to use Maven. Because of that, we need to have Maven and Java installed in our Jenkins container. I'll log back into the Jenkins container with this command here. Now, usually for Jenkins to run, it needs Java installed. Okay, so most of the time, when you check the Java version on a Jenkins server, it would already be installed. If it's not, of course, you have to install it yourself. Let's check for the Maven. So Maven is not found, so Maven is not installed. I'm just going to install the Maven with this command. Let's check Maven version again. And now you see Maven is installed now. So next, we need to set up our Maven and Java installations inside our Jenkins UI or Jenkins server. So first, I'll go to my Jenkins, manage Jenkins, go to plugins, available, search for Maven. You see Maven integration here. Install this plugin. So the plugin is installed. Now it's always a good practice to restart your Jenkins whenever you do installations like that. So let's exit this for now. Run the restart command one more time. Now when I refresh this, I have to sign back in. Okay, we are back in. I still need to go back into the Jenkins container and run the Maven version or the Java version as well. The reason why I'm doing this is we need the location where the Maven is installed, or the Maven home. We also need the Java's installation home, which is right here. So we need these two locations to set up Java and Maven inside Jenkins server. And I have the instructions right here. After installing the plugin, just go to Manage Jenkins Tools, and then you see Maven installation because you've installed the plugin. Set up this stuff. So let's go to Manage Jenkins Tools. When you scroll down, you see JDK and you see Maven right here. So that's what we are going to set up right there. Let's do the JDK first, since that's the one on top. So add, and for the name, for consistency, this JDK version is 17.0.15. That's why I gave it this name, just so it stands out a little bit. So I'll use that same name here. Paste this. You can see that we have to attach the Java home. This is the location of the Java installed. Copy this. Paste it here. Because we've provided the home, we don't need to install automatically. We leave it like that. That is for Java. And then we have Maven, so add Maven. For the name, we do a similar thing here. Maven version is 3.8.7. So I'm going to use Maven 387. Paste this here. And we are not going to install automatically because we have the Maven home. We already installed it on our Jenkins container, by the way. Our Maven home is this right here. User share Maven. Paste that. And I'll apply and save that. So we've set that up with exactly this stuff right here. When you go to our pipeline script, and I'm going to modify this Jenkins file, which is our pipeline script. So edit this. And the first stage, we have initializing the pipeline. First, I have this echo command here. I'm going to add some shell commands here. That is sh. And I'm just going to output Java version and MVN version. When I run this, this is going to fail because I need to direct it to where the Java and Maven installations are. Now remember, when I set it up, I went to Manage Jenkins Tools, and this is where I set up the Java with the JDK and the Maven right here. So I need to tell the Jenkins script under the agent, I will specify tools, and inside the tools, I will have my JDK installation. I will also have my Maven installation. Now for my JDK installation, this right here, you can click here. This was the name I gave it. So this name has to be the exact same thing right here. Same with the Maven. This is the name I gave it. Copy it. And that should be the exact name here inside tools. Save this. That is saved. And so I can now apply and save this. Go back to dashboard. This is my pipeline script. Build now. That should start the second build. And that was also a success. I checked the Java and Maven version, and you can see this is the Java version and that is the Maven version. This is the exact same results that we get when we run Maven version or Java version on our terminal. So that's how you configure Maven and Java on your Jenkins server. All right, next, let's exit out of our Jenkins container here. I'm going to clear the screen one more time. Now we want to set up our SonarQube. Now for our SonarQube server, we are going to set it up with a container as well. So this is a command for setting up the SonarQube container. Run this. and this may take a while to come up. If you want to monitor it, you can check the logs of this container. By the way, you should see that I'm also putting this SonarQube container on the same network I created earlier, which is the Jenkins Java network. This is because I will establish a connection between the Jenkins and the SonarQube container later on. Okay, let's check this logs. So it took a while to get up, but now SonarQube is operational. So we can get out of this logs with Control-C. Now, when I check the Docker processes that are running, these are the two Docker processes. We have the Jenkins here and the SonarQube there. Just as we got a container IP address for the Jenkins, we can do same for the SonarQube with this command here. Run this, and that is the IP address of the SonarQube container. So I'll copy this, go to my browser, paste this there, and SonarQube uses port 9000. Press enter, and the SonarQube should open like that. All right. So that is that. Now, when you open, you see that you need a username and password, but the initial username and password is admin. Use that to log in, and then you'll be asked to change the password. Admin, password admin. Old password is admin, and now we need a new password. Just set a new password for it. Enter the appropriate password, and then update. Can close this for now. And this is the first page that you will see. We need to set up a scanning job on our SonarQube server. So the first thing that we need to do, now that our SonarQube server and the Jenkins server are both up, let's log into our Jenkins server and try to establish a connection between that and the SonarQube server. So I'll get inside the Jenkins using this command here, using bash. I already updated it earlier. If you want to, you can still update it one more time. So it's up to date. We need to establish connection between two nodes. So you're going to need the ping utility. So I'm going to use this command to install ping inside my Jenkins server. That is installed. Once it's installed, I can exit it. And then I'll use this docker exec command between the two containers to check if I will actually get traffic from either one of them. So I'm using docker exec IT, just the Jenkins container name, ping, and that is the SonarQube container name. Press enter, and now you can see some packets of data coming in. This means that there's a connection between those two containers or those two servers for Jenkins and SonarQube. You can use Control-C to exit out of this. Now we know network is established between the two containers. Let's now set up our SonarQube token, and we can use it to do our credentialing in our Jenkins UI. So within the SonarQube here, if you go to the account label on the right top corner, I will open a new page or new tab. So go to my account, go to security, and you see generate tokens. I'm going to generate a token here. And for the name, I'll call this Sonar GCP. For the type, I'll use a global analysis. By the way, I have all the steps here. You can easily follow. All right. So expires in 30 days. And that's the name of our token. Generate. And this is our token. Copy it and save it somewhere safe. Next, let's go to Jenkins. Go back to our dashboard. Manage Jenkins. Credentials. Global. And now we add a credential for that Sonar token that we just created. This is going to be a secret text. And then the token is still available here. And copy it and paste it here as a secret. And for the name, let's call it Sonar token. Create. And now we've added our Sonar token. Next, we need some more plugins. So go back to Manage Jenkins, plugins, available. And now for Sonar scanning, we need some tokens. Let's see Sonar So these are the two plugins we need: Sonar Scanner and Sonar Quality Gates. Install these two. It's successful. Let's go back to our dashboard and now manage Jenkins. Just like we did for Java and Maven, we need to do the setup for the Sonar. So manage Jenkins, go to systems. And now when you scroll down, you see SonarQube installation right there. Click add SonarQube. For the name, let's call it Sonar. For the URL, that is our URL. This is Jenkins. Sonar URL is right here. Copy that and paste it right here. And then for the authentication, this is a token we just created, so select that. Everything else are just basic stuff we don't need for now. Apply and save. So that is done. Now, before we create a Sonar token job, I want us to look at how to check out our GitHub code into Jenkins using the Jenkins file. So far, whenever we build this pipeline, what we do is to fill in the information here and then apply and save. But we can actually automate it with our Jenkins file as well to check out the code inside our GitHub repository. So what I would do is, inside the build job that we created, go to pipeline syntax. I'll open it in a new page. So this is our pipeline syntax. Click here and go to checkout from version control. Our version control is Git, by the way. Repo. Go to the root of our repo. Copy the clone link. Credential is right there. The branch is main. It's quite similar to how we set it up by clicking generate pipeline script. Now this is our pipeline script. I would copy this, and inside our Jenkins file, which is right here, I'll edit this Jenkins file here, and inside the checkout GitHub code, I'll add an extra command, which is exactly what I copied. I'll paste it in here. It's quite long, but nothing complicated here. Just that link that I copied from there. This should automatically check out our code. So for now, I'll save this. When I apply and save this, and I hit build now, this should be able to check out my code successfully. And everything is a success. Next, before we do any SonarQube analysis of code or anything like that, we need to build our application in the first place. So I'm going to do this step, which is the build job using a Maven. Now, we already know Maven and Java is installed. So since it's installed, we can run any Maven jobs inside our pipeline. So to build a Java application using Maven, you just use shell mvn clean package. This should build the job. And to test it using JUnit testing, quite similar. This is also going to be a shell script, mvn test. And that should test your code, right? So I'll save the changes here, and I'll try the pipeline build for the 4th time. Build now. And you can see the build is going on. All right, so that was also a success. So we built and tested our code successfully. Now let's actually focus on running our SonarQube analysis. Now for that, on our SonarQube page, this is where we created a token. That's fine, we can ignore that part. In this first page that we opened when we set up our SonarQube, you're going to create a project. I'm going to call this a local project. So create a local project. And we need to give it some name. Jenkins GCP. That is also the key. And for the branch, in our GitHub repo, our branch is main, which is right there. Next, we need to set up the project. So we need a baseline for our new code. Now I'm going to use a global settings for this. Create project. Yes, it's created, but we are creating a local project. So You're going to click locally. We can provide our token name. I closed it. Let me reopen that page. Security. This is a token, and I called it Sonar GCP. Paste it here. So it has invalid format. I think it's because of the hyphen that I put there, and I cannot edit it. I'm just going to create a new one. Let's call it Sonar GCP. This is a global token. 30 days. Generate. This will be our new token for SonarQube. Okay, so I need to make some changes in our GitHub. Go to dashboard, manage Jenkins, credentials, Sonar token, update, and I'm going to change this secret with the new one I just created. Paste that here and save. That's the only thing I'm going to change. So there's nothing new. And I'll delete the old one. This is the old one. I'll revoke it. So now when I'm setting up the project, I need the one without the dash symbol, as you can see here. Okay, continue. And now we want to run our analysis on our projects. We have Java. You don't see it here, so select Other. Project is going to be on a Linux machine. We are going to need this in our pipeline script. But for now, I'm not going to copy it yet. Let's go to Jenkins, to the dashboard, manage Jenkins. We already set up system for our SonarQube. Just right here, we set it up already. Now we need to also set up the SonarQube tool, right? So go to Tools, and you should see Sonar Scanner installation right there. We need to set this up. Now for this, I'm going to call it Sonar. Just to stand out, I'll add the number 7, Sonar 7. And this is going to install it automatically. And I'm giving it 7 because of the version right there. Apply and save this. And now we can go to the dashboard, go to the Jenkins job, configure, scroll all the way down to pipeline syntax. You need to update this SonarQube stage with our code. And so for that, we already have some of the commands that we are going to use right here, but we need to be able to use the credentials that we created as well. So go in here and look for, because we need the credentials, look for with credentials right here. Add bindings. Now for our SonarQube installation, the bindings we used was a secret text, and that is already selected. It's already selected there. And now for the variable, I'm going to call it Sonar capital T token. You don't need any more. So generate pipeline script. See, I need this block. I will copy this. Now inside my Jenkins file, I will edit this. This is the Sonar block right here. Now paste the block that I just copied. Now I would need some stuff inside of this block, which is a SonarQube command. But to do that first, we need to create a SonarQube environment. Because remember, we installed a SonarQube on our system, right, on the Jenkins I showed you earlier. So do one more time here, and you should see with SonarQube environment, this is right there. Select that. Select the token that we created. This is the token. Now you may see this error, but you can ignore it. So you generate this, copy this. And now when I go to my Jenkins, inside here, I will paste one more time this command. Arrange it a little bit. Now, you see that when I imported the token in here, I got this error that cannot find any credential with ID Sonar token. Now that's because it's unable to identify the actual environment of our SonarQube. When I go to my Jenkins, I'm just going to use this one. Go to the dashboard, manage Jenkins, go to systems. This is where we set up the SonarQube installation. This is actually the SonarQube environment. Okay, this name or this installation we did. So I'm going to use that to replace what's in here. Okay, now the reason why I can get rid of that is because already we are checking it out with the credentials up here. So we don't need the credentials again inside this. Now with this, I'm going to define a shell block with another one. And now within this shell is where our commands will be located. And the commands is right here. So I will copy this. Let's use this copy button. Come in here. Now I'll modify this a little bit, but I'll just paste it for now. We need to specify the actual location of this Sonar scanner. We specified the application itself, but we don't know the home. Similar to how we did the Maven and the Java home. Now the home of the Sonar scanner is actually where we install the tools. We go to tools. This is the Sonar home. Okay. So how do we actually capture this inside our pipeline? Go to your pipeline again. And inside here we are going to create an environment variable block. And within that, I'm going to create an environment variable called Sonar scanner underscore home. And this is going to be a tool. And the tool we called it Sonar 7. Now with that, I'm going to copy the name that I used as the environment variable. And down here, I will reference this with the dollar and curly braces. Paste the environment variable in there, slash, bin, slash, the Sonar scanner name that you see right there. So that is our project key. This is our source, which is the current directory. This is our URL for Sonar. And this is our Sonar token. Because our Sonar token is referenced here, remember we saved our token inside our Jenkins. So this actually contains the same information as this Sonar token right here. So I can also use a $sign and that exact name, the Sonar token there, and it will still pick it up. But we are missing one thing, and that is when we build our project, where will it be stored? So let's go to our Jenkins. So far, let me close some of the tabs here. So far, we've built some Jenkins jobs, right? So if I go in here, let's say the latest one, the latest build, go to workspaces. This is where we build our jobs. Whenever you build it, look at the information we have in here. We have this only one directory source code and then these files. When you build it, it creates another directory called target. Now this target is where the actual Java application is stored, right? Go in there and you see hello world, this .jar file. And then there is jar.original, which is like a backup file. Okay. But this is the actual application that we want. In order to scan it, we need a target and then go to classes. So this is where you have the application properties, which is stored right here. Since this has the application properties, we need to provide this path to our SonarQube. So in my SonarQube, I will add one more variable to be before as dsonar.java.binaries and that variable is going to be target / classes. That is where the application's property is stored. Okay. So add that to that. I think our code looks okay. The curly braces, everything is fine. One more thing. Whenever you want to scan with a SonarQube, you need to provide some information about the project key, not just that, but the organization. Now, the organization basically is going to be information about your GitHub repository. So you need a GitHub organization, which is the username of your GitHub account. And then you need the project key. We already know that from Jenkins. So you pick those two information and create a file and store it in there. So for now, I will save these changes. And then within here, I will create a new file. And this new file will be called sonar-project.properties. And for the information, you're going to have a sonar.project and sonar.organization. Now, organization is our username here, which is icon C. You can use lowercase, it still doesn't matter. For the project key, our project key is Jenkins GCP. So copy that, paste it there, save and commit changes here. Okay, now we are ready to run our SonarQube analysis. On our Jenkins, let's go back to our build job and let's try a build for the 5th time and see how it goes. And you can see it's a success. So our SonarQube was also successful in scanning our code or doing static code analysis right there. Now go to your SonarQube account here and you can see the results is already in here and it's passed. We're using quality gate and all. Now, of course, there are some hotspots that needs to be fixed. If you check it, you will see the issue, and that's with the Docker image that we are using as our base image. It says we are using root user, so it's not that safe, but you can easily change that. So that is how you would use SonarQube to perform a static code analysis, and you have your results and everything in one place. If there are any vulnerabilities, you will see everything right here. But for now, it passed, so that's good. So we can move on. All right. So our next step here is to scan our file system using Trivy. So that is at this stage. Now, before we do that, we need to make sure Trivy is installed inside our Jenkins container. So again, we will use the docker exec command to log into our Jenkins container. Now, when I do Trivy version, it's not found, so we have to install it. Now, you can go to your browser and search for how to install Trivy. And if you follow the link, you can see. And this is a script for installing it. This is actually the script I'm going to use. Now, you may have a different version, which doesn't change anything. So on my README, I have this command here, which is a curl command. I'll run it here inside my Jenkins container, and that should install my Trivy. All right, so it's done. Let's check the version again, and I see I have 0.17.2. So Trivy is installed. Exit my Jenkins container. Now with Trivy installed, I just need to go to my pipeline script. So Jenkinsfile, go inside the Jenkinsfile and edit this. This is it. Again, I'm going to use shell. Now the command that I'm going to use would look something like this. I'm going to paste it in here. So this is going to use Trivy to scan the file system, that is the FS. And the result is going to be in a table form. And the -O is for output. I'm going to send the output to this file, fsscan report.html. Now you can use any file extension really. You can use txt, PDF, whatever file extension you want to use, that's fine. So I will save this. Go to Jenkins. And then try build number 6 to see if our Trivy scan is successful. By the way, when the Sonar scan was successful, you see the symbol right there. That also opens the SonarQube, and that is also right there. So that was also a success. So our Trivy scan, let's see. Okay, yeah, it did the scan right here. And everything ended successfully. Okay, now at this stage, we need to build our Docker image. Remember, on our Jenkins container, Docker is already installed, right? Now do Docker version. This is the version of Docker installed. So we have that. If it's not there, you have to install your Docker inside the Jenkins container. Or if you're using a VM for the Jenkins, install Docker inside it. Next, we need some plugins for our Jenkins job. So I'm gonna go to dashboard, manage Jenkins, plugins, available, and search for Docker. I'm gonna need this Docker and Docker pipeline. Install. Okay, it's installed successfully. Now let's go back to manage Jenkins, and then go to tools. Of course, it's always best to restart the Jenkins server, but sometimes as soon as you install a package or plugin, you should see it here. So I will add it and then we will restart it later. So for the name for our Docker installation, I will just call it Docker. I'm just going to install this automatically. This is fine. And it will install from, let's say, docker.com, which installs the latest version. Now for Docker, the plugin is easier to use. So you don't need to set the Docker home and all that, unlike Java and Maven. Apply and save this. In order to build a Docker image using our pipeline, you need to make sure that there's a Docker file inside your repository, which is right here. And our Docker file just uses the OpenJDK 11 as a base image. It sets a working directory /app, and then it's gonna copy hello / the jar file. Okay, so remember in our Jenkins, whenever we build a job, I think this is where we build the last job. Yeah. Whenever you build a job, it creates a workspace where the image is stored. If you go to workspaces, click on this, you see targets, and this is the jar file. So this is what we are trying to copy into the Docker container using our Docker image. And so the location is going to be target / this file. So that's where this comes from. And we are copying it inside this /app, and we will save it as hello world.jar. All right. Now, because we are using Spring Boot by default listens on port 8080. But currently, I'm sure you can realize that Jenkins also uses port 8080. So we can use the same port for Spring Boot since we are working on the same system. I made some changes here by exposing port 8090 for the Spring Boot app or the Java application. Now, when you do that, you need to give the Java command this flag for it to be able to run the Spring Boot application. If it's 8080, you can just run java-jar this command here and it will run the Java application. So that's an important flag right there. Let's now go ahead and build our Docker image. So I'll go back to our Jenkins file here, edit it. All right, let's build it first. By the way, to build a Docker image, you can use a script. I'm going to use a shell script in here. Now, of course, to build a Docker image, you use the command docker build -t, and then you need to provide some name. I'm going to use some environment variable, so I'm going to write it something like this. All right. Now the first variable should be your image name, and the last variable should be the image tag. These are environment variables, so we need to define it. Now, when I go up to environment, I'm going to define the image name and image tags as these. So the image name, I'll call it java-app. And then for the tag, I'll tag it as the build number. So that should reflect here when we run the command. Now the dot you see here is just for the Jenkins to use the Docker file in the current directory to build a job. Save this, commit changes. Now in our GitHub, in our Jenkins, let's build the 7th job. So we built our Docker image. Now our Docker image is called java-app, which is the image name, and the tag is the build number. Now this is our 7th build, so it's tagged as :7. Okay, and that was a success. For our next stage, let's go to our Jenkins file. We need to scan the Docker image we just built with Trivy. Even though we already scanned the file system with Trivy right here, sometimes building the image also generates some vulnerabilities in our application. You need to be careful with that. So I will do one more scan with Trivy, and this will scan the Docker image itself. I already have Trivy installed inside my Jenkins. By the way, I'm going to exit the Jenkins container in the terminal. I already have Trivy installed, so I don't need to do installation of Trivy anymore. So I'll just edit this, and then I'll add the command for scanning a Docker image for using Trivy. And the command looks something like this. So Trivy, and for severity, we are trying to catch all the high and critical vulnerabilities in our app. And if it fails, there should be no progress, and it's going to be in a tabular form. And our reports will be saved inside this file right here, similar to the FS scan report here. And the image we are trying to scan is the image we just built right here. And this is the name and the tag. So we need to reference the exact same thing right here. So pretty straightforward command. I will save this. So I'll go to Jenkins and build our 8th job. So go in here. And this is the image scanning going on right here. Okay, and that was a success. And you see the results of our Trivy scan here. So that is how you can scan a Docker image using Trivy. At this stage, we're going to look at how to deploy our application to Microsoft Azure. Now, because we built a Docker image out of our app, we are going to deploy it to Azure Container Instance. But before we do that, we need to first authenticate with Azure, which is the stage we are going to talk about right now. So let's edit this Jenkins file. Yeah, authenticating here. Now, in order to authenticate with Azure, of course, you should have your Azure account ready. This is my Azure account here. Make sure you have a subscription. Usually when you create your Azure account, it comes with a default subscription. You can use that, or you can create a new one by clicking on subscriptions, or you can search here for subscription and create one. I already have one here, so I'm just going to use that. So first things first, I'll go to my terminal, Docker PS. These are my containers for Jenkins and SonarQube. I need my Jenkins container, so I'll use this command to log into the Jenkins container. Once I'm in, I'm going to install the Azure CLI. By the way, all these commands that I'm going to run are on the GitHub repository. Let me open this in a new tab. If you go to README, all the processes that I'm following are right here. You install the ACLI, then you log into it. Okay, so this is where I am. This is the command I just ran, and this is the next command I'm going to run to install the ACLI. I'm going to copy that and paste it here, and this should install my Azure CLI in my Jenkins container. Okay, it's done installing. Now the next command is to check the Azure version. let's see, AZ version that was installed. That is 2.75. Once that is ready, I can now exit my Jenkins container. Now, since my CLI is installed correctly, even though I'm currently logged in this Azure portal, I want to log in via the CLI so that we can do everything from our terminal as well as from our pipeline that we are creating here. So it's important to log in via the terminal. And so for that, I'll use the command az login. Az login. Now we'll claim that sign in your web browser by opening this page. So I'm gonna copy this link. Go to your browser. Paste it here and press enter. And we'll ask for a code, and that code should be this right here. Copy it. Paste it in here. Next. And it will say that you are signing into your account. So this is my account. So I'll select that. Continue. Okay. So you can see that it says you have signed in into the Microsoft Azure cross-platform command line interface on your device. You may now close this window. So it successfully launched the login via CLI. And you can see it here. By the way, this subscription here is exactly what you see right here. This is the subscription that is loaded. So what you are saying is my Azure account and resources loaded on my terminal as a CLI. Now, follow the prompt and answer some questions here. So it says the default is marked with star, and that's the default subscription. Now the question is select a subscription and tenant. It says type a number or enter for no changes. Either you type 1 or press the enter key for no changes. So I'll just put 1. Okay, so this shows I've been successfully logged in. Next, we are going to create an Azure Service Principal. Now, the reason why we need a service principal is think of us trying to create users in our Azure portal and adding some roles to different users. And that role that we use service principal to create is a contributor role. Now, in Azure, contributor role allows a user to create, to manage, and to delete resources. But that particular user who is a contributor cannot delegate access like the owner does. So it's almost like you have similar role as an admin. By the way, this is the stuff that I'm talking about. You have a similar role to the admin or the owner, but you can't make any delegation of access. Okay, but you can at least create, manage, and delete some resources in your Azure portal. So to create that, I will use this command here. Of course, I need to modify it a little bit. We need to put the subscription ID here. So I'll copy this. Go to the terminal. I'll paste it here and modify it a little bit, especially with the subscription ID. Get rid of this. And here's our subscription ID. This is it. Copy that. Paste that to replace it. So we are creating a Azure Service Portal for RBAC. Remember RBAC from Kubernetes, or in general, that's role-based access control. So that's when we only give certain access to users to perform certain roles, and after tasks are completed, the access is revoked. The name we are giving our service principal is Jenkins SP, and the role is as a contributor. Our scope is limited to our subscription, so we need your subscription, and then we need SDK authentication. Because remember, you are using the CLI to do this. Press enter. So it's currently done. By the way, if you go to your Azure portal, go to subscriptions, click on Azure subscription 1. That's our subscription account. Go to control access IAM. When you go to roles, these are all the roles available. Now there are owner role, contributor role, reader, delete, and stuff like that. Let's look at role assignments. As we just created one, this is the role we just created, which is a contributor role. And this is a service principal, and that's the role contributor. You can click on it to get more information about that. And this is it here. All right. Next, see that when we created it, it generated this output, and you can see it's in a JSON format. Copy this information. I'm gonna create a file. Now, the file that I'm gonna create will be a file that I will use as my credential. Open a new terminal here, CLS. So I'll create a new file here. Let's say AZSP. Now this file has to be JSON file. And what I'm gonna do is open that file and paste the content that I copied in there. Save it like this. So that's the content. Back to our terminal. Let's go to our Jenkins, go back to the dashboard, manage Jenkins, credentials, global, and then we are gonna add that as a credential. Of course, we created a file, so this is gonna be a secret file. Browse, and the location of the file, look for it. This is it. Select the file there. Now give it some ID. Let's call this AZ service principal. Do the same thing for the description. Create. So that's created right there as a secret file. Next, let's go back to our terminal here. If you go to our Jenkins file here, after authentication, we need to tag and push our image to ACR or Azure Container Registry. We need to register our Azure subscription to use Container Registry, or at least we need to check it if it's registered. So from our terminal, again, the commands are all here. Register your Azure subscription to use Container Registry. That's what we are going to do next. Copy this command, and then run it on your terminal to see if it is registered or not. So you can see that it's registered. Now, if it's not, then you have to run this command to register it. But since it's registered, that's good. So our next stage is going to be how to create our Azure Container Registry repo, where we are going to push our image to. Let's make sure that we can log into our Azure portal via our Jenkins file. I'm going to add that to this authentication page. Okay. Now for that, let's go to pipeline syntax. I'll use with credentials. Just right here. Bindings. By the way, we use secret file. So select secret file. All right. For the variable, I'm going to call it Azure_cred. And that is, of course, our service principal, which is our credential, generate script. So I'm going to copy this block. Go to our Jenkins file. It's already in edit mode. So the with credential command here. So I'll paste this here. Now within the credentials, I'm going to create a shell block. First is to do the login. Now I've prepared some command here that I'll put it in there. Okay, so this is the command I'm using. First is just the echo command. Next, we are going to run the AZ login command. Now we need to specify the service principal, the username. Now the username of our Azure account, we can get that using the .client ID $Azure cred. The Azure cred, remember, is the Azure credential that we put inside our credentials. And then for the password, we can also generate that from the same JSON file that we added as a credential. It's inside the JSON file as client secret. By the way, if you go to the terminal, everything is here. This is the client ID. There's a client secret, so that's the password. So it's basically reading the content of the file. And then the tenant, exact same thing. So it's reading for all that, and it's redirecting it to a file so that it can reuse it whenever we run the AZ login command. And then it is also setting our subscription, because you can have multiple subscriptions in the Azure account. At the moment, I only have one subscription, which is Azure subscription 1. You can create multiple. So each project that you're working on, you can attach different subscription ID to it. So with that, I'm going to save this. Commit changes. And then I'm going to try to trigger the pipeline build to see if the CLI login to Azure works perfectly. Let's go in there. So that was a success, and you can see it here, all the information about trying to log in and everything. That was a success. Next is how to push our Docker image to Azure Container Registry, or ACR. So our next step is pushing our image to Azure Container Registry. In order to push image to an Azure Container Registry, there are a few things you need to do. Now, you need to create a resource group first. If you have one, you can use it, but if you don't, you have to create a new one. Now, to create a resource group, since we have the CLI installed, we can easily use a CLI command like this to create a resource group. Copy this command here and modify it on my terminal. Paste this in here, and then I'm going to change the resource group here. Give it a resource group name that you can easily note. I'll call this iquant-00. Next is the ACR name, or the Azure Container Registry name. Give it some name that you can easily recall. I'll call it Java app repo 00. Okay, press enter. So it started and it's finished creating. If you want to verify, you can go to your Azure portal, search for Container Registry. Registries, yep, there it is. Now you see that this is our container registry we just created, Java app repo 00. That is exactly what we created with this command right here. This is it. This is the resource group name, and that is the repository name right there. If you go in there at the moment, it's empty. All right. So with that done, now we can look at how to actually push the image to ACR. First, let's go to our Jenkins file and modify it with the new information. Before that, I have some environment variables that I'm going to use. So I created 3 more variables here. I have ACR name. This is the name of our repository. This is the repository we just looked at. I also have the ACR login server, and that is going to be ACR name.azureacr.io. Now this is going to provide something like a link or like a server URL. And then this is the resource group that we created. Now with that, we can go to this stage. By the way, we are going to use again the with credential step that we used earlier. So let's go to the pipeline syntax. I still have it here, so I'll just copy this. Paste it here. Get rid of this. Right, so I'm again gonna use a shell block. Let me just copy all the commands that I used for this. Paste it here and just explain it one by one. First, we are logging into the ACR repository that we just created. And remember, ACR name is the environment variable. It's one of them. This is it right here. Next, we are gonna tag our image. So when we build the image in Docker step here, we called it image name.image tag. Now the image tag is the build number and the image name is Java app. So it's gonna always be java-app : some number, which is the build number. So we should have the exact same thing here and then replace it with some name that we will recognize on Azure. First, URL to the Azure Container Registry. That's why we needed the ACR login server. And that is one of the environment variables up here. It has the .azureacr.io. All right. And then give it some image name. I'm using the same old image name, which is java-app image tag, which is the build number. So that is the tagging. And now we can actually push it. So you use Docker push, the new name and tag that we just created here. Save this. And now I'm going to go into Jenkins, build, open this. And if it's successful, we should see a Docker image inside our Azure Container Registry. So it's trying to log in into the ACR repo. And you see it started pushing. By the way, the current image build tag is 11. So we should see java-app : 11 inside our ACR repo when this is done. Okay, so you see that it's a success, it's pushed, and that is the random hash that's usually generated after each build. All right, let's go to our ACR repo, refresh this. Now let's go inside it. All right, so this is our repo. Under services, go to repositories, and you should see Java app. Go in there, and this is the tag, which is the 11th build. It's the exact same tag we saw here. This is the 11th build. The Docker build step, which is up there somewhere. This was also tag 11. So that's how you would push your image to Azure ACR. So our next step is going to be how to deploy that image to Azure Container Instance or Azure ACI. This is our last stage. We are going to look at how to deploy to Azure Container Instance, which is ACI. And we need to also get the app URL so that we can use that directly to get our access to our app on a browser. In order to do that, first you need to make sure that your Azure Container Instance can pull images from Azure Container Registry. You need to verify that first. And to do that, log into your Jenkins container. I'm already logged in. So I'm going to run this command here. What this command is going to do is it's going to update the ACR repository that we created. Remember, this was the name we gave it. And I'm going to enable admin as true. That way it has access to ACR images. It also has access to pull images in and out of repositories. Okay. Run this. Remember, when we pushed the image to ACR, we needed to register our Azure subscription to use container registries, right? We are going to do the same thing for Azure Container Instance. So we have to register our Azure Container Instance to our subscription. Currently, of course, you can see there is no instance in here inside the container instances. You can first check if it's registered already. And we use AZ provider show namespace Microsoft.container instance and then query registration state. Press enter and you can see it's already registered. So no need to register. But if it's not registered, just check the README file. This was what we used to check. If it's not registered, then you register it personally with this command, and that should register it. Since our container instance is registered, now is the time to deploy our application. Let's go to our Jenkins file, edit this. By the way, I'm going to add 2 more environment variables. ACI name, this is going to be the name of our container that we create. I'm calling it Java app-container. And then ACI region, I'm using EastUS. I'm still going to use the credentials. Since it's the same, I'm just going to copy it from here. And then inside steps, paste it here. Close the shell block. So our command would look something like this. I know it's a bit long, but it's really straightforward. So first, we are going to run AZ container create, which is going to create an Azure Container Instance. It will give it the name ACI name. That's the container instance name that we provided earlier in the environment variable. This is referencing the resource group. This is the image. Remember, we used this in the push command. This is our image right there. And then we need the registry login server. That is the ACR login server we used earlier. And then we are going to need the username and password. Now the username and password can be queried from our Azure credential. So I'm going to use this command here to query it. And then we need to give it some label for DNS name. And we are using Java app dash the build number for that. For the port number, since the Spring Boot Java app uses port 8090, remember in our Docker file, this is same thing. Let's go to the Docker file. So our app is listening on port 8090. That is the same port that we need to expose, port 8090. For the location, East US, that's the location, and that's the environment variable ACI region. For the OS type, Linux, CPU 1, memory 1.5, restart policy, never. Next, now when we deploy, it takes it a few seconds to come up. So I will let this go to sleep for about 30 seconds. By then it should be ready. And then once it's ready, we want to get the URL of our ACI app so that we can directly from our Jenkins logs here, I can get the command that I will copy, paste in my browser and have access to my app. So that's why I'm adding this block. I'm adding it as app URL representing the container that we are creating. So this will just show all the containers that we have created. But if you specify the ACI name that we gave it and the resource group, it will just pick out the particular container that we are trying to create up here. Now we are querying the IP address. So that is what we are looking for. Whatever that gives us, we are porting it with port number, which is 8090. This will be returned as the variable app_URL. So our URL is going to look like http:// the app_URL that we get. It will come with the port number as well. So no need to add the port numbers here. I'm going to save this, make changes. And in Jenkins, I will build one more time. Okay, I think we have issues with some parentheses here. All right, so I have 1, 2, 3 open. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, we need one more. Commit changes. Now let's rebuild it one more time. Build now. The 13th build. Now go to the Azure Container Instances. Remember, there's nothing here. And then we will monitor it. The Trivy scan is done. Authorization is done. It's pushing now. And it's pushing the tag 13. By the way, since we've built it multiple times, a lot of the stuff is already cached. So now it's doing the deployment to ACI. So it's deploying. Now it's going to sleep just to make sure everything is ready before outputting the app URL. By the way, that is the IP address of our app. That's the port number. Okay, so it's successfully finished. Now you can see here that this is our app URL. We don't have to go into the ACI. We can go there. All right. This is the container that is currently running. And it's running in the location US East. We're using this icon 00 resource group as a Linux based type. And it's in the current running state. You can click on this here to check some stuff in here. Let's see containers. This is our container running here. All right. Since we have our app URL on our Jenkins here, all we need to do is just click it or open it in a new tab and you see the app output. Hello, welcome to iQuant YouTube channel. So I will end it here. By the way, if you have any questions, leave it in the comment section below and like, comment and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. Before we leave, make sure you do a cleanup. So I will go in here to our ACI container and you can see restart, stop, delete. You can stop it if you want to. By the way, you see some information coming in from the CPU cores and memory. I don't want to stop it, so I will hit delete. Yes. And it will start deleting. It's done. That was pretty quick. I'll close this. Since ACI is deleted, next go to Azure Container Registries. This is it. This is our registry that we created earlier. Click this. You see delete. By the way, before I delete, if I go to repositories, go to our repository we created. These are the tags that we created. Remember the 12th build failed because of the curry braces that I missed. So I have only 11 and 13, but you see both of them here. So each tag is present there, so everything was working nicely. Now hit delete. Yes. Refresh this. Okay, so you see that it's gone. Now I can close my Azure portal So I'll come back to my terminal, exit out of the container. Let me clear the screen. Docker ps. Now I need to stop my servers here. So I need to stop my Jenkins server, which is this one. You can use the ID or the name. I also need to stop the SonarQube server. Stop these two. So this shouldn't be working now. The SonarQube is down. The Jenkins should also be down. Yeah, they are both down. Now I need to delete them. So docker ps-a. These are some containers that I have here. I'm gonna remove them. Docker rm, the SonarQube, this is the Jenkins. I have other ones here. I want to remove all of them. This should remove everything. So docker ps-a. All right, so everything is removed. Now, thanks again for joining me on this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. I'm still a new channel and I'm trying to grow. So like, comment, and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. And I'll see you on the next one.